My parents put me in an orphanage when I was 5 years old because I was difficult and they had problems. However, as it turned out, my mother was already pregnant with my sister at the time. But more than 20 years later, they found me when I had become successful. They wanted to take me back and be a family, or so I thought. But it turned out that it was just an illusion and that they only needed me for my money. I was finally able to put everything in its place and leave the past behind. I remember the day down to the smallest detail. I was 5, clutching my red dinosaur backpack so tightly the straps dug into my palms. My parents told me we were going on an adventure. That's what my mom said. She smiled, but her eyes didn't match. My dad was quiet, staring straight ahead as we drove. No radio. No small talk. Just the hum of the engine and my feet kicking the back of the seat. We pulled up to a large brick building with white-trimmed windows. There was a playground out front, empty except for one kid swinging slowly back and forth, alone. I asked if we were here to play. My dad said nothing. Inside, the building smelled like paper and cleaning fluid. The lady at the front desk smiled at me in that too big way adults do when they're about to lie. My mom crouched beside me, tucked my hair behind my ear, and whispered, "We'll be back soon, okay? Just wait here. Be a good boy." She kissed my forehead. My dad patted my head. Then they turned around and walked out the door. I ran after them. I reached the door just as it clicked shut, hands smacking the cold glass, screaming, "Mom! Dad!" But they didn't turn back. I watched their car drive away, the red taillights getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared. I didn't understand what had happened. At that age, you don't think your parents can leave you. I sat on that same bench by the front window every morning for weeks, waiting for them. Every time a car pulled up, my heart would leap, and crash when it wasn't them. I started recognizing the regular delivery van, the mail carrier. None of them brought my parents. I stopped waiting by the window after a while. Not because I stopped hoping. But because the hope hurt too much. Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I did wrong. I replayed every memory with them, trying to figure out the moment I failed them. Was it the time I spilled milk on the rug? Did I make too much noise? Was I just too much? The orphanage was functional. I wasn't abused or mistreated, but it was cold in the ways that matter. Staff rotated out constantly. You learned not to get attached. You learned that hugs were something you had to earn. If you cried too much, they labeled you difficult. If you were too quiet, you were ignored. I chose to be quiet. When I turned 7, I had already seen too many other kids come and go. I watched toddlers snatched up by smiling couples. No one wanted the older ones. Definitely not the weird quiet boy who flinched when people touched him. Then Clara and George showed up. They were in their mid-30s. She wore a yellow cardigan and he had laugh lines etched into his face. They came on a Saturday. I was reading in the corner, my back against the wall. The social worker tried to coax me out, but I didn't move. I didn't trust them. George didn't try to talk to me right away. He just sat on the floor nearby and started reading a book aloud. Not to me, just out loud. The first chapter of Charlotte's Web. I pretended not to listen, but I heard every word. They came back the next week. And the week after. Until finally, I started sitting a little closer. When they asked if I wanted to come live with them, I didn't say yes. I didn't say anything. But I packed my bag. The first night in their home, I didn't sleep. I lay in the bed they gave me, a real bed, not a cot, with dinosaur sheets and a little nightlight in the shape of the moon. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for the other shoe to drop. For them to change their minds. But they didn't. They were patient. So painfully patient. Clara made me lunch every day and cut the crusts off because I once mentioned I didn't like them. George taught me how to ride a bike, and when I fell, he didn't get mad. He just helped me up. I still had nightmares. I still cried myself to sleep sometimes. On my 8th birthday, I locked myself in the bathroom and screamed that I didn't want to party. I thought parties meant goodbye. I thought if I let them get too close, they'd leave too. But they stayed. Even when I broke down. Even when I pushed them away. They took me to therapy. A kind woman with kind eyes helped me find words for the things I didn't know how to say. Slowly, the ice cracked. Slowly, I began to trust. Clara and George became mom and dad. They always told me I was smart, and school became my refuge. Math clicked in my brain like puzzle pieces snapping into place. I devoured books. I won awards. My parents showed up to every event, every ceremony. They clapped the loudest. When I graduated high school, I got a full ride to a top university. I called Clara the second I found out. She cried so hard she dropped the phone. College was a blur of hard work, long nights, and growing confidence. I interned at firms where my background was a curiosity, a footnote I avoided talking about. After graduation, I landed a job at a high-profile consulting firm. The kind with suits and elevators that needed keycards. Work consumed me. After years of grinding, I was no longer just another employee, I was the face of the company. At 31, I became CEO of Deltarise Analytics. The same firm where I started as a scared intern. My story caught media attention. A national business magazine ran a feature on me, From Orphan to Executive, The Unlikely Rise of Andrew Williams. The article painted me as an emblem of resilience, abandoned at 5, raised by loving adoptive parents, and now a young CEO opening a new Chicago branch. I spoke about Clara and George, about discipline, structure, and the small miracles of routine. I didn't name my biological parents, but I didn't sugarcoat it either. I said, I was left at an orphanage when I was 5. I waited for people who never came back. The story went viral. I was in my office the morning we launched our Chicago branch when Kayla, my assistant, buzzed in. Mr. Williams, there's a couple in the lobby. No appointment. They say it's personal. I almost told her to send them away, until she added, they say their names are Rebecca and Tom Davis. I froze. Did they say what this was about? No, sir. Just that it's urgent. I swallowed hard. That name. I hadn't heard it in decades. Put them in conference room B, I said. I'll be there shortly. Walking down the hall felt like dragging chains. I opened the door slowly. There they were. Rebecca had aged, her face thinner, lined. Tom looked wary, stiff. He held his hands in front of him like a student about to be scolded. Andrew, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't sit. I didn't speak right away. You read the article, I said flatly. She nodded. We saw your photo. The part about the orphanage. We knew right away. So you just showed up. After all these years. Tom tried to smile. We thought maybe you'd want to see us. We didn't know how else to reach you. I felt sick. Like the room was spinning slightly off balance. Why now? Because I'm successful. Because my name is in lights. You had my whole childhood. I sat by a window every day waiting for you. Now you're here, in my office, like nothing happened. Rebecca opened her purse and slid a small photo across the table. Me, age 5. A smile too big for my face. We kept this. We never stopped thinking about you. I looked at the photo. My heart clenched. I placed it face down on the table. That boy didn't know what was coming. But I do. And I left the room. I didn't go to work the next day. I sent Kayla a message before sunrise, under the weather. Taking a couple of days. Please cancel my meetings. She responded instantly. Of course. Let me know if you need anything. Get well soon. I put my phone face down and didn't touch it again for hours. The apartment felt like a cave, dim, heavy with quiet. I didn't open the blinds. I didn't turn on the lights. I paced. I sat. I lay down and got back up 10 minutes later. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop. Rebecca and Tom. Their faces. The photo. The way my name sounded in their mouths. Like they'd never stopped saying it, even though I hadn't heard it from them in over 2 decades. Should I have stayed longer? Should I have let them explain? Was I too harsh? The questions looped like a fever dream. No answers. Just the echoes of doubt. I made coffee and didn't drink it. I stared out the window but didn't register the view. I tried to read, but the words blurred. Instead, I remembered. I remembered the orphanage. The pale yellow walls. The smell of bleach and cafeteria trays. The woman who clipped her keys to her belt and always called me sweetheart with a mechanical tone. I remembered the bench by the window. The one I sat on every morning, hoping today would be the day they'd come back. The day I wouldn't be just another forgotten kid. I remembered the way other kids got picked. The way their new parents knelt to hug them, laughing, crying. I remembered smiling for them even though I felt invisible. And I remembered Clara and George. Their warmth. Their awkward, gentle patience. The night I screamed for hours and Clara just sat beside my bed, stroking my hair until I fell asleep. And now. Now I was the CEO of a company. A man with power, prestige. But that 5-year-old boy still lived inside me, still unsure why he wasn't enough. I barely ate. The fridge stayed closed. I drank water, maybe, out of habit. I moved from the couch to the bed and back like a shadow. On the second day, I stood in the shower until the water turned cold. I thought about their eyes. How tired they looked. How sad. What if they were telling the truth? What if they did think of me? What if they regretted it every day? Was it so hard to believe they felt pain too? But then I remembered birthdays spent staring at the ceiling. Parent-teacher nights when Clara and George introduced themselves while I watched other kids hug their moms. I thought about the way Rebecca pushed that photo toward me. Like proof. Like it was enough. Would one photo erase everything? The knock on my door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I didn't move at first. Then I looked through the peephole. Nobody. Just an envelope on the floor. Plain. No name. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. Andrew. We didn't want to scare you. We didn't know what to expect. Maybe this was selfish. Maybe we were hoping for a miracle. We read your story. We saw how far you've come. We are proud of you. Truly. But more than anything, we are sorry. For everything. If you ever want to talk, no strings attached, we'll be here. R&T. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it and slid it into the back of my desk drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, wondering how you forgive someone for disappearing. That evening, I picked up the phone and called the only mother who never let me down. Clara answered on the second ring. Sweetheart. Everything okay? I hesitated, my voice tight. I need your advice. She didn't rush me. Just waited. They came to see me, I finally said. My biological parents. Rebecca and Tom. They read the article. Found me. Silence. Then a soft, I see. I walked out on them. I didn't let them talk much. But now I keep thinking, maybe I was too cold. Maybe I should have listened. She took a breath. Andrew, only you can decide what kind of peace you want. If hearing them out helps you find it, then do that. If distance is what you need, then take it. Just follow your heart. What if I don't know what my heart's saying? Then listen harder. And give yourself grace. You've carried a heavy burden for a long time. It's okay to be unsure. We talked a little longer. She didn't say what I should do. She never did. But her voice grounded me. That night, I didn't sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind jumping between memories and imagined conversations. By morning, I made a decision. I pulled out the letter, reread it once, and called the number Rebecca had scribbled on the back. She answered breathlessly. Andrew? I'd like to meet. Somewhere public. Of course. Wherever you want. We chose a quiet cafe downtown. I arrived early, sat in the corner, and tried not to fidget. When they walked in, I felt that strange tightening in my chest again, an emotional collision of familiarity and distance. They sat across from me. No handshakes. Just silence. Rebecca clutched a small envelope. Tom stared at the table. For minutes, none of us spoke. The awkwardness was thick enough to chew. Then Rebecca slid the envelope across the table. These are for you, she said. I opened it. More photographs. Faded. One of me in a Halloween costume, Batman, maybe 5 years old. Another of me asleep on a couch, mouth open. A candid shot of me and Tom at a park. We didn't have many, she said. But we kept what we could. I didn't know what to say. I just stared at the photos, searching for a hint of the love I spent years craving. Tom cleared his throat. It hasn't been easy for us. After we left you, we struggled. Jobs came and went. I've had chronic issues, lungs mostly. In and out of hospitals. I've been working part-time, Rebecca added. Nothing steady. Rent is always late. We don't have family to lean on. They looked at me, waiting. Hoping. Leaning on my compassion. I didn't respond right away. I just nodded slowly, feeling the weight of what they weren't saying, and the sting of what they still hadn't. They never said why they left. Never mentioned the choice. Not yet. I folded the photos and slid them back into the envelope. Thanks, I said. And nothing more. The question sat in my chest like a stone. Heavy. Unmovable. It had lived there for years, buried under therapy sessions and forced smiles. I had rehearsed it in my head 1,000 times. Why? Why did you leave me? I stared at the phone all morning, debating if I should call them again. But I knew I needed to ask it face to face. I needed to see their eyes when they answered. We met at the same cafe. This time, I brought nothing. No notebooks. No pretenses. They arrived 5 minutes late. Tom looked worse, pale, slow-moving. Rebecca's hands shook as she held her coffee. I didn't waste time. I need to ask you something, I said. They looked at me, wide-eyed. Why did you do it? My voice cracked. Why did you give me away? What made you think I didn't deserve to stay? Rebecca lowered her gaze. Tom rubbed the back of his neck. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Rebecca said, I was pregnant. I blinked. What? When we left you at the orphanage, she said, barely above a whisper, I had just found out I was pregnant, your sister. We were broke. Struggling. We panicked. We thought we couldn't handle two. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Tom looked away, ashamed. So you chose her, I said. Rebecca flinched. You chose her over me. You found out you were having another baby, and you decided I was expendable." Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't like that. Wasn't it?" I said. My voice rose before I could stop it. "You replaced me. Before she was even born." The cafe was quiet around us. No one interrupted. No one dared to look. Tom finally spoke. "We didn't have jobs. We barely had food. We thought the orphanage would be temporary. That we'd come back for you when things got better. But you didn't." "We didn't know how," Rebecca said. Then time passed. And the longer we waited, the more we convinced ourselves we were doing what was best. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. Replaced. Not just abandoned. Replaced. It hurt in a way nothing else ever had. Worse than the day they left. Worse than the empty birthdays. They had made a conscious choice. A decision between two lives. And they hadn't chosen mine. I stared at them, seeing strangers in front of me, not family. "You came here asking for sympathy. But all I feel is fury. Not because you left, but because you never looked back." Rebecca was crying now. Tom looked as if the air had been knocked out of him. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive you," I said quietly. But I needed to know. I stood up. The envelope with the old photos still in my coat pocket. I didn't say goodbye. 2 weeks passed. No messages. No calls. No visits. Just silence. I started to believe it was over, that they had said what they needed to say and disappeared again, this time for good. I didn't know if that thought comforted or disappointed me. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Rebecca. "Andrew, I'm sorry to reach out like this. I know things have been difficult. But your father's in the hospital. It's serious. We can't afford the treatment." We didn't know who else to ask. I read the message twice. Then a third time. This was the first time they'd asked me for anything. I don't know what made me act. Maybe it was the word hospital. Maybe it was something deeper. Maybe I was still holding on to the smallest thread of responsibility, if not as a son, then as a human being. I sent a short reply, "What hospital?" She responded immediately. I wired the money quietly, grabbed my coat, and drove across town. The hospital was old and gray, tucked behind an empty strip mall. Inside, the lights were harsh and the walls too white. The air smelled of bleach and worn-out plastic. I asked the nurse at the desk for Tom Davis. She pointed me to room 314. The walk through the corridor felt longer than it was. Each step loud, each corner a hesitation. Just outside the room, a woman stood alone. She was on the phone, one arm cradling a tablet, the other gesturing slightly as she talked. She looked like him. Same bone structure. Same serious brow. But she moved with confidence. She wore heels and a coat that screamed expensive. Her hair was neatly pulled back, her makeup flawless. She ended the call as I approached. Our eyes met. "Hi," she said, casual. "You here to see Tom?" "Yes," I said slowly. "I'm Andrew." She blinked. "Oh." There was a moment of pause. She didn't reach out. Didn't smile. "I'm Emily," she said simply. Her voice was pleasant, but her tone was clipped. Controlled. She glanced back at her phone. "I'm late to a meeting about Dad's discharge paperwork. But he's stable for now. It's just, a lot." She gave a quick, polite nod and turned to go. And that was it. No curiosity. No warmth. No recognition of anything beyond logistics. I watched her walk away, her heels tapping down the corridor like a metronome. I opened the door and stepped inside. Tom was asleep. I sat in the corner, the silence between us thick and cold. Whatever I'd imagined about meeting my sister, about what that moment might feel like, it wasn't this. I stayed maybe 10 minutes in that hospital room. Tom didn't wake up, and I didn't try to wake him. It all felt distant. I sat there thinking, not about him, but about Emily, how composed, how unaffected she seemed. How quickly she left. When I stood up and walked out, I didn't look back. I drove straight to the office. It was late, but I sat at my desk anyway, going through reports I didn't need to review. Numbers made sense. They didn't lie, didn't guilt, didn't ask for more than they were owed. Over the next few days, Rebecca started calling more often. Her messages weren't emotional, they were practical. Things they needed. Money for utilities. An overdue water bill. Gas for the car. The same car, she said, that Tom needed to get to future doctor's appointments. Then it was the car itself, something about the transmission. Another estimate. Another request. And I sent the money. Quietly. No questions. No judgment. It became a rhythm. A pattern. Rebecca asking. Me giving. I kept telling myself it was compassion. That this was what families did. That maybe, slowly, something real was forming again. Sometimes she'd say thank you. Sometimes she'd just say, we're so proud of you. And I let myself believe it. Over the next few weeks I focused on work, stayed late, buried myself in spreadsheets and deliverables. My parents, my birth parents, kept texting. Light, casual messages. They wanted to meet again. But now they are at home. I was surprised. It meant something. At first I thought maybe they were preparing a surprise since my birthday was in 2 days. That I was glad. I believed that she remembered on his birthday how that little boy comforted himself with hope. I said yes. I thought maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe there was something worth salvaging. This time, we met at their apartment. It was small, dated, cluttered but lived in. My mom, Rebecca, had made coffee. My dad, Tom, seemed more at ease. They had photos on the mantel. Emily was in most of them. A smiling teenager in braces. A young woman in a graduation cap. One with her holding hands with a tall guy who looked like a football coach. They showed me pictures of her ring. They said their sister got engaged and they were planning a wedding in a month. Told me about the venue. The dress. How excited they were. I sat there, nodding. Smiling politely. It was like watching someone else's life on TV. One I was never cast in. Then Tom cleared his throat. Listen, Andy, we hate to even ask. But money's been tight. And the wedding is costing more than we expected. We were wondering if maybe, you'd be willing to help. Just a bit. You're doing well, right? I froze. You want me to pay for the wedding? Yes, but... Rebecca rushed to say. Not all of it. Just a little. Emily really deserves something special. She's such a good girl. I felt like I was 5 again, staring at that orphanage door. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded slowly. I'll think about it. They called me here. Not because they remembered my birthday. Not because. They needed help. They hugged me when I left. I didn't hug back. But later that night, I transferred them $15,000. Why? Because somewhere deep inside, I still wanted to be part of something. I still wanted to believe they meant it when they said they missed me. Over the next few weeks, they called more often. Sometimes just to chat. Sometimes to ask for more money. And I, like an idiot, kept helping. 2 days later, I got email, from Emily. I know things are weird. I don't know the whole story, but I'd really like to meet sometime. Just the two of us. No parents. Just the two of us. I thought about it for days. I talked to Clara about it. She listened, as she always did. She never told me what to do. She just reminded me that I had value. That I didn't have to earn anyone's love with money. I agreed to meet Emily. We picked a small coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. I got there early and took the seat farthest from the window. I wanted to see everyone who came in. She arrived on time. Tall, brunette, big brown eyes that looked familiar. Andrew? Yeah. Hey. She sat across from me and ordered a tea. I didn't get anything. Thank you for coming, she said. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either. She looked nervous. That surprised me. I'd expected arrogance, maybe entitlement. But she looked like someone walking into a room full of landmines. I didn't know you existed until I was 15, she said. They never talked about you. Not until I found a box in the attic with some old papers. I leaned in slightly. What papers? An old orphanage form. Some letters. A picture. You. I didn't remember them taking any pictures of me. I confronted them. That's when they told me. That they had you first, but things were hard and they couldn't manage. I said nothing. I wasn't sure what I felt. Anger. Sadness. Confusion. I asked why they never told me. My mom said she didn't want me to feel guilty. My dad said it was just easier to move on. That last line hit harder than I thought it would. She looked down at her tea. I didn't ask you to meet me to make things worse. I wanted to see you again. You're my brother. That word again. What's it like? She asked. Being adopted, I mean. That made me laugh. Bitterly. Like being rescued from a fire someone else started. She winced. I didn't apologize. We talked for another hour. Mostly about neutral things. Hobbies. Work. She was studying interior design. Engaged to a guy named Matt. You seem like you turned out okay, she said with a smile. Better than okay, actually. I wanted to ask you for help. Our parents and I are going to have a hard time living together. Could you help with the mortgage? We need space. And our apartment is not big. But I promise to help. She is not to blame for what our parents did. Took a while. When we parted ways, she gave me a quick hug. I didn't return it. Not fully. But I didn't pull away either. Back home, I thought about the conversation for a long time. Maybe Emily really did want a relationship. After some time, all the documents were ready. It was supposed to be a surprise for my sister's wedding day. I had to reissue the documents for her. The next day, Rebecca emailed me again. We heard you saw Emily. That means so much to us. Family is what matters. You'll see that in time. Then one Friday evening, I got a text from a distant cousin I barely knew. Hey, are you coming to Emily's wedding tomorrow? I stared at the screen. Tomorrow? I hadn't received an invite. No call. No email. Nothing. I texted back, was I invited? The reply came fast. Oh. I thought you knew. They said you couldn't make it. I felt cold. Not angry. Not yet. Just cold. Like the world had gone gray. I didn't sleep that night. I was still awake when the sun came up. The glow of my phone was the only light in the room. I kept checking my messages. Refreshing. Hoping. Maybe they forgot to send the invitation. Maybe it was some ridiculous mistake. I waited for an explanation. An apology. Something. Nothing came. I showered and dressed like I was going somewhere. I even put on a suit. It was pathetic, but I think some part of me believed if I looked ready, maybe they'd call. Maybe they'd tell me there was a place for me after all. By 10 a.m., I knew it wasn't happening. They had lied. Told people I couldn't make it. That I'd declined. That I had something more important to do. I stared at myself in the mirror, dressed like a ghost at a party he wasn't invited to. Later that afternoon, I took a walk through the park. I watched families take wedding photos near the pond. A little girl tossed bread at ducks and giggled as they chased it. I saw a young couple kiss under a tree. Life moved on around me. I felt like I was standing still. Back at home, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for something special. I drank straight from it. I didn't bother with a glass. It tasted like vinegar. Clara called. I let it go to voicemail. A few hours later, I got a picture from my cousin. Emily in her wedding dress, smiling like a model on a billboard. My parents standing beside her, beaming. The caption said, "Such a beautiful day. We missed you." Missed me? You didn't even invite me. The anger came fast. Hard. All the years I spent wondering what was wrong with me. All the therapy sessions. All the nightmares. And now, they wanted my money but not my presence. I called my mom, Clara, back. She answered on the second ring. "Andy. Are you okay? They didn't invite me." She was quiet. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I paid for it," I said. $15,000. And I didn't even get a fucking seat. Clara didn't tell me not to swear. She didn't scold me. She just listened. They lied to people about me. Said I couldn't come. Do you understand how that feels? Yes, she said softly. More than you know. I cried again. Not because I missed them. But because I missed the illusion. The fragile hope that maybe I had a family out there somewhere. That maybe I hadn't just been left. But there wasn't. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat at my desk and wrote down everything I wanted to say to them. Page after page. Most of it I'd never send. It wasn't meant for them. It was for me. The next morning, I blocked their numbers. Every one of them. My birth mom. My birth dad. Even Emily. And then I waited. Because I knew the silence wouldn't last. It didn't. 2 days later, I got an email from Rebecca. "Andrew, we didn't mean to hurt you. You're taking this out of context. The wedding was a small affair. We only invited close family and friends. We were trying to be considerate." I didn't respond. That evening, Tom called from a different number. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. "Hey, son. I don't know what this is about. You've been distant. Your mother's upset. We need to talk." Your mother? You mean Clara? The only woman who ever tucked me in and meant it. They called again the next day. Then again. The messages got more aggressive. More desperate. And then came the guilt. "How can you do this to us? We are your family. We've struggled. We're just trying to keep things together. You're doing so well, you could help." Help. That was all they ever really wanted. Family. That word used to mean something to me. It meant bedtime stories and pancake Saturdays. It meant Clara's soft voice and George's clumsy dancing in the kitchen. It meant safety. Now. It sounded like a demand. Like a rope someone was trying to tie around my neck again. After I blocked them, the silence was brief. Too brief. The emails started showing up in my inbox, sometimes 2 or 3 a day. Rebecca wrote the most. Paragraphs filled with guilt, revisionist history, and loaded questions. "Don't you remember the times we took you to the park? You loved the swings. We were struggling so much. We thought the orphanage would be temporary. We never stopped thinking about you. I didn't respond to any of them. But I read every word. I hated that I read them. Hated that some part of me wanted their version of the story to be true. When I was 12, I tracked every dollar Clara gave me. Lunch money, chore payments, pennies from the sidewalk. I made graphs, color-coded and precise. It was the only control I had after a life that started with abandonment. That habit returned. I opened a spreadsheet called Transactions, and listed every payment I'd sent to Rebecca and Tom. $1,500, February, medical emergency. $500, March, groceries. $15,000, April, wedding support. $400, May, car repair. Over 5 months, I gave them more than $20,000. I hadn't even been invited to the wedding I paid for. I stared at the spreadsheet until the lines blurred. I felt used. Like they were rebuilding their life on my back. Not as a son, just a bank account. That night, I called Clara. I feel like a fool, I told her. You're not. You just hoped. That's not foolish, she said. George joined the call later. Just being there. Asking about my day, my sleep, dinner. Real care. Before we hung up, Clara said, just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they deserve your heart. A week later, I received a letter. Handwritten. Certified. From them. Inside was a list of grievances. You wouldn't be who you are without us. We gave you life. You were difficult. We had no choice. I read it 3 times. Then I shredded it. That night, I added one last entry to my spreadsheet. $0, June, dignity. I closed the file. I didn't expect peace to come after cutting them off. But I did expect quiet. Instead, there was noise. Calls from unknown numbers. New email addresses. Messages from extended relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, people who suddenly remembered me, all parroting the same thing, they're your parents. One even had the nerve to say, family is forever. That phrase never sat right with me. If family was forever, where were they when I was sitting on a thin mattress at 5 years old, waiting for a knock that never came? My life became a pattern of ignoring. Ignoring calls. Ignoring guilt. Ignoring the familiar pull of shame I thought I'd buried. Work became my anchor. Deadlines, structure, outcomes I could control. I volunteered for extra projects, stayed late, signed up for weekend reviews. Anything to avoid the emptiness creeping in. One Saturday, I ran into an old college friend at a coffee shop. Sarah. We hadn't spoken in years, but she hugged me like no time had passed. We caught up over lattes and shared the polite updates people give when they've grown apart but still care. Then she asked, "How are your folks?" It felt like a punch. I lied. Told her everything was fine. She smiled, touched my hand, and said, "You always had the best parents. Clara and George were like TV parents. I remember your mom bringing cookies during finals." I smiled too. But my stomach twisted. I left early, saying I had work. I didn't. I just didn't want to explain the mess. That night, I dug through an old drawer and pulled out a photo album Clara made me for my high school graduation. Pictures of every birthday, school play, report card. Notes written in the margins, "You loved this book. You wouldn't stop talking about frogs this year. We were so proud of you." Every page was a reminder of what love actually looked like. Not just words, but effort. Consistency. Presence. The next morning, I wrote Clara and George a long email. I didn't talk about Rebecca or Tom. I just told them how thankful I was. How much their patience had shaped me. How I was still learning what trust felt like, but they were my start. Clara replied with a heart emoji and a 4-paragraph reply that made me cry. George called later and just said, "Thanks, kid. That meant more than you know." Then I finally understood, once and for all, that family is those who are close to you, those who understand you, love you, and never betray you. Those who love you simply for who you are.